Yo, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB Strategy Show presented by Prize Picks. Dave Loughran at Lotfield_D on Twitter, joined by Adam Scherer at Ship My Money DFS. And today, well, switching things up a little bit. We're going main slate after the early slate, 5-game early, 8-game late, or main. So depending on when you're watching this, if you want to skip to that, I don't know if we won't have timestamps because you have to take it down and put it back up, and all that stuff can be annoying. And then it takes you offline. It takes you off YouTube for a while. But just that's why we got the sidebar. If you're watching after the fact, later in the day, main slate or early slate already started, and you're looking for main slate content, just go a little bit forward. Just fast forward it to main, and you'll be good to go. Anyway, what's going on, dude?
Yeah, how's it going? Looking forward to split slate.
Yeah, a little 13-game action today, 5 and 13. There's one or like 12:30 game, and then there's a 6:40 game. But outside of that, everything's on either the early or the main. So we'll make it happen. Happy to have you guys with us. Take a single second out of your morning to hit that thumbs up and atone for your sins here on the Strategy Show. Greatly appreciate it. Helps us a ton. If you haven't done so yet, just a subtle reminder, and subscribe to the channel. Also, remember, all of our shows available in podcast form, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you get you take in your podcast, we're there. But if you're over at Apple, leave us a rating and a review. That stuff goes a long way, and we appreciate you for it greatly. All right, man. I'll save the pleasantries. Wouldn't want to bore you like yesterday with all of my incredible discussion that you were just unentertained by. Although I'm sure you went and researched some of it afterwards. I won't even do any of that. What's that?
Absolutely did not.
Debatable. But we'll get into it. We got 13 games. We got 5 early. We got 8 main. So since we have so many games, let's just get straight into this one and make life a little bit easier for everybody watching here. Don't want to keep you all morning. Don't want to be here all morning. Dodgers, Baltimore Orioles. So, by the way, one thing before we start, actually, this is baseball related. What a weird slate that was yesterday. Just some insanely high-scoring games. And, of course, Houston's the one that finishes with fewer runs than almost anyone on the slate.
Yeah, I mentioned that to Eric on Twitter because Eric tweeted there were, however many teams that scored. Like,
I think he said 10.
Yeah, but then it ended up being 11 because of the Giants game, but more than, 8 or 9 runs or whatever it was he tweeted. And it was like, and then the Coors game has 7 runs combined. Wasn't a good slate to play a ton of Coors like I did.
And the highest owned pitcher got tuned up as well.
All the pitchers did pretty much.
Yeah. There were a few really good starts. It's just they weren't owned. Like Logan Allen had a really nice start. I think he was 1% owned or something. A few of those guys that just didn't get any ownership that were those mid-range price points, which were many pitchers yesterday, had pretty solid games. They just weren't owned.
Yeah. Bradley was fine. Allen was really, really good. But yeah, most of the popular pitching absolutely sucked.
So let's see if today's slate looks any different. We'll kick it off with the early Dodgers and the Baltimore Orioles. All right, so you've got Julio Urias and Dean Kramer on the mound. 9-run total. Dodgers big favorites, -155. Just looking at the early slate, though, you have Brian Bayo against Oakland. So on one hand, that's encouraging because it is Oakland, and they're bad. But he's 9,100. He has a K rate slightly above a 20%. John Gray against the tough Tampa team. I guess what I'm getting at here, just to kind of set the foundation, give us an overview. What do you make of pitching on this 5-gamer?
So we don't have a top pitchers tool right now. So kind of difficult to answer.
Yeah. I guess just looking at it, though, there's not you have Sandy Alcantara against St. Louis, John Gray against Tampa. They're 8,400 and 8,700 respectively. Bayo's 9,100 against Oakland. Julio Urias against Baltimore is 9,500. Lefty at Baltimore, you've talked about that a lot, and we can dive into that. But there just doesn't seem like there's a ton of great pitching. You're going to get a long reliever in Tampa against Texas. Waldichuk against Boston, and he probably only goes several innings. You've got a Coors game. There isn't a ton of great pitching. Granted, it's only 5-game slate, but there really isn't a ton. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, there's some decent arms, but like Gray has the tough matchup. Urias is fine, but pretty tough matchup. Kramer's got a tough matchup. Bayo is going to stand out just because of the matchup with Oakland.
Let's talk about the Dodgers then. We'll wait for these tools to get updated as well. Urias against Baltimore. What do you make of the lefty coming in here against them today? And he's the highest priced pitcher on this slate. There aren't a lot of great pitching options. Well, specifically not a lot of great pitching options plus pitching matchups. Him and Kramer, what do you do with these two guys today? Of course, Kramer coming in at 7,900, but a tough matchup against the Dodgers as well.
Yeah, Urias is going to look pretty good here, I think. The concern with him is always, how many pitches are the Dodgers going to let him throw? They're typically cautious with him, but he has gone 6 innings in back-to-back starts, didn't reach 90 pitches in either of those. So you do still have the question of, if he's a little bit less efficient and he's at 80 pitches after 5, is he getting the 6th? But I assume he will. And, we have seen him go 6 in the last couple of starts. So that's good to see. But also just always prefer taking lefties against the Orioles in Camden Yards because it turns around their switch hitters. So they're hitting from the right side in a park that downplays right-handed power. It really neutralizes Gunnar Henderson, which is huge for this offense. The one thing that guy still can't do is hit left-handed pitching. And that's a really big deal here. So you're going to get a right-handed heavy lineup, but you're either not going to have Henderson or he's just basically going to be an automatic out. It's just a much weaker version of the Orioles against left-handed pitching. So I do like Urias at 9,500. Kramer's more difficult to get to given the matchup. He's been solid this year, 22.7% strikeout percentage, 4.2 xFIP, but a 4.9 implied run total for the Dodgers. Tons of power in this lineup, a lot of hitters that just make you work. So, it's a 5-game slate, and Kramer does have talent. He's not pitching in Coors Field, so I could see how you get to him a little bit, but Urias to me clearly looks like the top pitcher in this game.
Yeah, Kramer's an interesting one too, because the strikeout stuff is there. Like you said, almost a 23% K rate. The thing though too is when you're going up against this Dodgers lineup, Kramer has a 265 x ISO against lefties this season.
Yeah, so, which is not ideal when you're facing Freeman and Muncy in particular in Canada.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't look great. But you know what? Who knows? On a short slate like this with Coors Field at that price point, maybe it does make sense if he can give you 6 innings of decent performance and 6 or 7 strikeouts. Probably get you there on a slate like this at that price point. It's just a scary matchup.
Right. I mean, the thing with Kramer here is, it's a scary matchup. I don't want to play a lot of him. But when you look at the pitching overall, to the point you made a minute ago, like Urias looks better than Kramer. Gray, probably better than Kramer, but also has a tough matchup with Tampa. Alcantara, probably better, but has a tough matchup with the Cards. Bayo, better. But, you're playing him before you play Waldachuk, probably. You're playing him before either of the Coors pitchers. You're playing him before the opener for the Rays. You're probably playing him before Hudson. So, he's probably the 5th best pitcher on the slate.
Could probably make a good argument for some of these Dodger bats, particularly left-handed bats, though, right?
Yeah, for sure. Park plays up left-handed power here. You have good lefties, Freeman and Muncy in particular. And that's not to say that you can't play the very good right-handed hitters in this lineup either. But like you said, 265 expected ISO to lefties, 400 expected WOBA, 173 expected ISO to righties with a 319 expected WOBA, higher strikeout percentage against righties as you would expect. So, again, Betts, Smith, Martinez, these guys are fine, but Freeman and Muncy are going to stand out as the top plays from the Dodgers. Then you do get some value left-handed bats. You should probably have Peralta, Hayward, and Outman all in the lineup, sub 4K on DraftKings. So the lefties look very good here.
Let's talk about the next game. We've got Tampa Bay and Texas. So on one side of this, you've got a bullpen game. I don't think we can. I don't think we can really take much away from this one at all. So take that for what it's worth. John Gray on the other side. Do you have any interest in pitching for this game right now out of the gate? And again, preface it with 5-game slate with Coors Field as well.
Yeah, some interest in Gray. We did just get the top stacks and I think top pitchers tool updated, so we'll have that in a second. But Gray is a good enough pitcher, especially for the context of this slate. About a 20% strikeout percentage, 4.5 xFIP this year. He started off really slowly, had some good starts, as the season went on. He does have a long track record of being a good pitcher as well. So it's a really tough matchup with Tampa, 4.4 implied run total, but it kind of just goes back to what we were just saying about Dean Kramer, where half of the pitching on this slate is just a complete non-option, or at least extremely risky. Like the only reason you would get there is it's a 5-game slate. Gray is kind of middle of the pack on this slate. Right now in the top pitchers tool, we have him 4th in top 2 pitcher percentage for the early slate. Bello, Alcantara, and Urias ahead of him, but Alcantara and Urias basically the same as well. So Kramer is 5th. So pretty much the exact same way that I laid it out a minute ago. So I think you're going to get to him just sort of out of necessity.
Probably. Yeah. Looking at bats though in this game too, you're still talking about a 9-run total in Texas. Basically even game here on the money line. What do we make of, and let me pull the top stacks tool up now that we've got the top pitchers tool up. Of course, you can sort these by main slate, early slate, and all that stuff. If you're a sub, you know that. Top stack, Tampa 8.5%, Texas 5.6%. I think you mentioned it a second ago, but from a hitting perspective, do you see any strong value here in either of these teams, or just appeal given that it's such a short one?
I mean, I think in tournaments, the offenses are interesting just because you're going to have so much ownership coming into Coors Field. Right now, we have the Astros projected to pull about 25% ownership and the Rockies to pull about 16. So you're talking about, 40% ownership going to Coors Field. You have 2 really good offenses here in Tampa Bay and Texas, 8% aggregate ownership coming into both of them. So from that standpoint, it's appealing. It's certainly not as good a matchup as some other spots on this slate, including Coors Field, but just such high upside offenses here. I am at least somewhat interested. Gray does typically have more issues with lefties than righties. 178 expected ISO to lefties this year, only 122 to righties. That's going to point you toward Luke Raley, Brandon Lau in particular, Josh Lowe also. And then on the other side, you're getting Little, followed by, I assume, Cooper Criswell. So, bullpen games never the most appealing, but still a 4.6 implied run total for the Rangers. The problem with them is that they're really expensive as a stack. They're a team I'd probably end up using more often as like a 2-man or one-off type team, just because it's so hard to get Semien, Seager, Garcia all together. But the Rays are a little bit easier to stack, and either way, if you can get to these offenses, the upside at low ownership is pretty appealing.
You look at this next game, right, where you've got Miami and St. Louis, Sandy Alcantara and Dakota Hudson. I mean, how many innings can Dakota Hudson go in this spot?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been pitching out of the he's been good, but I don't think you get more than a few innings from him.
Yeah, he went 3 1/3 last time out, 50 pitches. I feel like you'll be happy if you get 5 innings.
Right. Like 70 pitches max, it feels like. I don't know, but it seems unlikely that he gets there. In the top pitchers tool, though, you have Dakota Hudson with a 0.9% top 2 probability. Makes sense, especially at that price point. We don't necessarily expect him to go deep into this game. Austin Gomber at 1%. Cooper Criswell expected long relief for Tampa at 2%. Then there's a few in the middle, but you've got Sandy Alcantara at 32%. So him, Julio Urias, and John Gray are all in that like 31 to 32% top 2 pitcher probability here. Brian Bello up top against Oakland for obvious reasons. Is Alcantara just another one of those guys where you say, hey, it's not the best matchup, but the price tag makes sense on a 5-gamer, and I think you have to get to some of him?
Yeah, especially, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I don't really know how you get around it, because there's just so many pitchers on this slate that are borderline unplayable that it really narrows down the field. Like, it's Bello, Alcantara, Urias, Gray, Kramer. Then you get Coors Field and Ken Waldichuk. And other than that, you pretty much can't play anybody. So even though Alcantara hasn't been great this year, we've seen a big drop-off from last season. He's only striking out 19.5% of hitters, 4.07 xFIP. Cardinals are a tough team to strike out, but you kind of just have to take what you're given on this slate, and he looks like one of the better pitching options, mostly because the rest of the pitching options are so bad. So 143 expected ISO to lefties, 140 to righties, 19 to 20% strikeout percentage against both sides of the plate as well. At 8,400, he's just a reasonable option on this slate.
And he can still pitch deep into games too, so you've got that working for you. It makes sense. It's not a fun look. There aren't really any great matchups here paired with great pitchers. I think the best you get is Bello, but he's not great. He doesn't have a monster K rate. He does have a phenomenal matchup, and we'll talk about that. But In this game, it's Alcantara, and then I don't really see how you could get to Dakota Hudson.
No, I don't either. I mean, he's 7,500. It's not like you're talking about a 6K pitcher. And to get back to the point, I think that we were just making, Rance said in chat, pass on Sandy. Great. But if you're playing more than like one or two lineups, all that saying is you're just playing a ton of Bayo, Urias, like Gray, or you're playing guys that are way worse than Sandy. So like that's kind of the problem here is, we say it a lot on, we talk about a lot on shows where like people will be like, well, I'm not playing that pitcher. And it's like, great. Who are you playing that?
Yeah. Then who are you going to?
Right. Like that's the thing here. It's not that Alcantara is a great play by any stretch, but especially if you're playing a good amount of lineups, like if you're not playing him, you're just playing more of other risky pitchers.
Right. Like you could go to John Gray, similarly priced against Tampa Bay. You could go to Dean Kramer, a little bit cheaper against the Dodgers, who really struggles with left-handed power. Yeah, like you're going to have to make some decision somewhere.
Brandon, like the way I see it, like thinking about it from, like a 50 lineup or 150 lineup, a multi-entry standpoint, if I were to end up getting basically just jamming in Urias and Bayo, perfectly fine with that. And I just end up not really getting Gray, Alcantara, Kramer. But assuming that that's not going to be the case, I don't see any reason I would want to just be taking some huge stand on John Gray or on Dean Kramer for the sake of not playing Alcantara. To me, those three are all so similar that I want to just be mixing all three of them in.
Right. Give yourself as many outs as possible with these guys. Exactly. Because there isn't really a stand to take on them, considering they're all basic. Alcantara and John Gray are essentially the same ownership anyway, and the same price. So
they're essentially the same pitcher.
Right. Yeah.
19.8% K percentage for Gray, 19.6 for Alcantara, 4.5 xFIP for Gray, 4.1 for Alcantara. I mean, they're really similar. Gray has the more difficult matchup, but you're talking about a 4.4 implied run total for Tampa, 4.3 for the Cards. It's the same thing.
Do you like bats in this game?
Not particularly. Hudson, I don't think is very good. I don't mind getting to some of Miami. Jesus Sanchez continues to be 2,900. That's a pretty interesting price tag. It does stand out that Miami's salaries have dropped a ton, so maybe you do use them as like a value team. Arise is down to 4,400 on DraftKings. He'd been up at 5K. Solaire's down to 4,200. He had been up around 5K. So the Marlins are really cheap. We have them first in top value percentage right now. So from looking at stack score, which is the metric in the top stacks tool that factors in top stack percentage and top value percentage, Miami's actually fourth. It's the two teams in Colorado and then the Red Sox against Waldichuk. Miami comes in fourth. So from a value standpoint, they are pretty interesting, but it's still, you're assuming a couple, probably one time through the order for Hudson and then getting into a bullpen game, which is never that appealing. On the card side, Alcantara just still doesn't give up a ton of power. They have good power hitters in their lineup. So if you wanted to take a chance on them, fine. But I think I would get to the Miami side first here, even though they have the lower implied run total.
Man, you look at this next game between Houston and Colorado and the Astros, you mentioned it, but 31% top stack probability. No other team is north of 12. You've got Colorado and Boston and the Dodgers all around 12%. This is going to be a spot that everyone's running towards. And you know what? Yesterday, that game, underwhelming. 7 total runs at Coors Field. It happens for sure. But, you also had 14 games on that slate. You have 5 games on this slate. And it is unique because while we don't have a ton of pitchers that stand out as just absolutely great arms, there aren't that many spots that you're just chomping at the bit to get to. Like, you know what I mean? You're not playing Tampa pitchers, but it doesn't mean you're looking to, heavily stack go all in against Tampa arms. Same thing with like Miami against St. Louis. You mentioned, sure, good, fine stack, looks decent in the top stack tool, but they're not a smash spot. What are your best alternative options getting away from Houston today? Is it going to be Colorado and then, of course, Boston against Waldichuk and then probably the Dodgers against Dean Kramer?
Yeah, those were the 3 I was going to say. Dodgers probably my favorite of that group just because they have so much power and they are in Camden Yards, which for lefties is good. The Rockies obviously are going to be a team you can get away from Houston for, but they're also pretty popular and they are the Rockies. The Red Sox are going to look good, but they're in Oakland, which suppresses power. So I think the Dodgers are my favorite team if you're not going to Houston. But the problem with avoiding Houston is that I actually misspoke a minute ago when I said Miami had the top value percentage on the slate, because I didn't even think to look at the team in Coors Field
It's
as also
Houston, yeah.
being the top value team. It's Houston. And so they're first in top stack percentage at 31%. They're first in top value percentage at 22%. They're pulling 24 to 25% aggregate ownership, but from a chances of success standpoint, that's not even too high. Like they're probably going under-owned. Now, you do still get to a point where when you're talking about large field tournaments, maybe you just don't want to play them anyway because the raw ownership is so high. But in terms of chances of success versus ownership, they still look like one of the most under-owned teams on the slate.
They do. And then on the other side of this one, you've got Colorado. This is a team that I mentioned to Josh last night in the deeper dive. Even when Colorado was bad, they used to at least be bad only on the road. They were still, they were still competent offensively at home. That hasn't consistently been the case this year, but relatively high implied total. It's not like that. It's not like they don't have a total north of 5 today, because they do against Brandon Bielak. So while it never feels good to get to the Colorado Rockies, I think we're stuck with them today, at least getting to a decent amount of them. 12.5% top stack probability, second highest on the slate. They do have some negative leverage here, though, because they're getting 16% aggregate ownership. And as you mentioned, the top value score goes to Houston today, not to Colorado, not to Miami, not to Oakland, but Houston.
Yeah, and I mean, Colorado looks good here. Bielak hasn't been very good this year overall, only striking out 14% of lefties, about 21% of righties, 202 expected ISO to righties, 220 to lefties. So it's not like this is a pitcher that you can't take bats against. And you do have a very reasonably priced Colorado offense as well. Now, they are projected to go a little bit over-owned, it looks like. We have them third in stack score, 12.5% chance of being the top stack, 11.5% top value percentage, 16% aggregate ownership. So we have them projected for more ownership than the Red Sox, despite the Red Sox being slightly higher in stack score, being very comparable at the very least. But it's just another good offense to get to. Bielak's better than Gomber, but he's still not very good. And the most expensive hitter on DraftKings in this lineup, Chris Bryant and Ryan McMahon, are both $4,400. So very easy to stack this team up.
Bielak still has an XISO north of 200 against lefties and righties this year. And now you're going into Coors.
Yeah, and it's not even like it's just a lot of expected power, but not expected production. 392 expected WOBA to lefties, 346 to righties. So, sometimes you'll see it, for example, a pitcher like Tyler Wells. His expected WOBA will be low, but his expected power is high because he just makes like 3 mistakes a game right down the middle and teams hit them a mile. But somebody like Bielak, it's not even like he's been a good pitcher at limiting production. He's giving up production anyway and also giving up power.
Yeah. So Colorado definitely fits the mold as one of the better stacks today, despite how bad they've been. Houston clearly for the best one. Any interest whatsoever in Bielak today or Austin Gomber? He's looked better lately, Austin Gomber, but I mean, I have no faith in his ability to escape this one unscathed and rack up strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to them, the sole reasoning is pitching on this slate sucks. Bielak is getting 3%, Gomber's getting 1%. And if they pitch well, they both can give you, a normal starter's workload. But there's nothing where I'm looking at either guy and saying, oh yeah, I think they're a really good play on this slate. Bielak specifically, I guess, is sort of interesting. Like if you compare him to Dean Kramer, it's a natural comparison point. $200 less expensive. Bielak is $200 less expensive. 3% projected ownership compared to 17 for Kramer. Kramer with a 23% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher, Bielak at 18%. So nowhere near a 6-to-1 gap that the 6-to-1 gap that you're seeing in ownership there. Kramer's still a very tough matchup with the Dodgers. So that's the spot that I guess stands out where maybe you get a little bit more Bielak, but I don't really want to.
Let's wrap up this early slate with Boston and Oakland. Brian Bayo, 42% top 2 pitcher probability today on this slate. If you look at FanDuel, where you're only rostering one pitcher, it's what's he priced at? Hold on a second. I'll go back to that.
Who are you looking for?
Brian Bayo. I was seeing what he was priced at on DraftKings or FanDuel, but
that's like he's 9,100 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is 10K.
10K. Okay. I mean, look, for obvious reasons, you're going to be getting to quite a bit of this guy today. We saw what Nick Pivetta did the other night. I mean, is it a guaranteed spot where he comes out there and smashes? No, he has a 20.5% strikeout rate. He's been pretty good though, as far as run production goes. I think he has like a mid 3 xFIP. You can correct me on that. I looked at it earlier today. I don't remember.
3.9.
Okay, so a high 3, but still, against Oakland, 46% ownership, essentially no leverage on either side of this one. But yeah, 9,100 against Oakland, most popular pitcher on the slate at 9,100. What do you think?
I think he's clearly the top pitching option. Now that, again, doesn't guarantee he's going to do well. I mean, look at Brian Wu yesterday. Look at Logan Gilbert 2 games ago. It's still baseball. There's still a ton of variance, but Bayo's good. 15 starts this year, 86 innings pitched. You mentioned the 20.8% strikeout percentage. His walks are down. He's only walked 6% hitters this year compared to 10% last year. 3.94 xFIP and 3.94 FIP. Gets a lot of ground balls, 55.4% ground ball percentage this year. And he's facing Oakland in Oakland. So this is another one where he's just going to stand out, just like you saw with Gilbert and with Wu, where everything on this slate is like, well, this pitcher's okay, but they have a tough matchup, or this pitcher's okay, they are in a tough park. And then it's like, oh, well, this pitcher's good, and he's in the best pitcher's park, and he's got the best matchup.
Right. Yeah, it's the only one where all the stars kind of align.
Right.
And it's Brian Bayo, for sure. Waldichuk on the other side, he does have 16.6% top 2 pitcher probability. He's getting around 20% ownership today. So it looks like he's going to be getting a little bit of love here, and it's simply because he's very, very cheap. How much do you anticipate yourself getting to him today, especially given the Houston bats aren't that expensive for a Coors game?
That's the part that kind of surprises me, because Waldichuk's not very good. The Red Sox are. Now, the park is good for pitching and all of that, but I'm surprised you're getting that much ownership to Waldichuk, because there's just not expensive bats. I mean, there are, but it's like Texas, the Dodgers, teams that aren't getting as much ownership. You have the best offenses on the slate, or the best offense on the slate is very inexpensive. The Rockies are very inexpensive. The Red Sox are not expensive either. So it's surprising to me the ownership's coming in there. Maybe it comes down by the time we get to lock, but as is, I wouldn't anticipate getting as much Waldichuk. And if you do need a cheap pitcher and you're looking to save ownership, I think that's where Gomber comes in. Like, I would play Waldichuk before I play Gomber, just given the parks. But a 20-1 gap, Waldichuk's not good enough to have a 20-1 gap on somebody.
Sure. Not a high strikeout, right? I mean, it's not terrible. It's slightly above 20%, average. But Boston, 20.9% K rate versus lefties this season. So it's not exactly like they're a high strikeout team either, facing southpaws. Like, it's not the best matchup either.
No, and the strikeout percentage, like you said, is fine, especially for his price point. But 5.35 xFIP, not throwing a ton of pitches either. I mean, 74 pitches last time out was the most he's thrown in a while. So, he's underpriced. It doesn't seem like a slate where you need it.
All right, so let's wrap up this early slate and then talk Maine here. 5 games, we went over every pitcher, we went over all of the bats and the stacks. If you were to look at your favorite non-Houston stack, would you put it as the Dodgers right now?
I think it kind of depends on how you're building. I would say it's either the Dodgers or the Rockies.
And I'm not going to ask you who your favorite pitchers are, because I think it's pretty self-explanatory in the sense that it's Brian Bayo, kind of everybody else. But just to recap, what do you think?
It's Bayo and Urias.
I'm sorry, I forgot about Urias. Yeah. But how do you approach pitching on a slate like today if you're playing a lot of lineups?
So I think I'm kind of interested to see how it looks for me, because there's 2 ways I could see it going. And I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think one, probably the most likely way, is that I end up just around the field on all of these guys, because none of them are great and they're all getting a bunch of ownership, or the ones that I would want to play at least. The other way I think I could see this going is if you just jam Brian Bayo and then, spread out your exposure to the rest of those guys, or even jam Bayo, get, around the field on Urias, and then just end up under on everybody else. I think those are the 2 approaches that make the most sense to me.
Okay. we'll see how that one goes. One down, one to go. One slate down, one slate to go. Before we do, though, you guys already know MLB lineup generator, $4.48 for your first week. Little shout out to Daniel Claybrook here. I love seeing this when somebody sends a screenshot in. And of course, the caption of this was, lineup generator is the shit. Thanks for everything. I'm like, all right, what do we got? $400 win. I go and look, quarter arcade, first place out of 38,000 entries. This is why I always say, like, even if you're only playing a couple bucks a day, I don't know how many entries he had into this. I don't assume it was a lot. Playing a couple dollars a day, even with the lineup generator, getting it less than $4.50 for your first week. Dude just turned it into $400 playing the quarter arcade, shipping a contest that had 38,000 entries, and he took first place solo. It's a wonderful thing to see. Some guys, hit us up with the generator. Oh, we 10K, 5K, 15K. But also, don't look at it like that. Look at it as and Josh mentioned it yesterday. Like if you're playing 3 or 4 lineups, or you're playing like the 20 entry max $1 contest, or you even wanted to, throw 50 in the quarter arcade or the nickel, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're playing, for less than $4.50 a week, I can tell you right now, there isn't a better tool out there for the price, especially being able to test it half off for the first week and see if you can get some screenshot worthy material. You can swap players, you can lock players. My recommendation is don't do too much of that, because what the lineup generator does is behind the scenes, it's simulating all of these lineups. You're already getting the best lineups projected, right? You can see the optimal score. You can see the ownership projection, how chalky or how contrarian it is, all of that stuff. You can set your stack types. They're like, all right, I want to run lineups that are 4-4 stacks, or I want to run 5-man stacks, or you can just go, I want to run all of these stacks. You can decide whether you want them chalky, contrarian, or just run all lineups. That's what I think is the best way to do, because once you're going through them, you can discard all the ones you don't like and keep all the ones that you do like, upload them straight to CSV, and then put them on the DraftKings or FanDuel. Or if you're on your phone, it's optimized for mobile. You just go on your phone, run the lineups, and then throw them on the DraftKings or FanDuel, however you want to play it. I'm telling you right now, if you're not using it and you're someone that's, not playing $1,000 a day, this is the best tool out there. It's going to make better lineups for you than you're making now. And if you don't think it does, well, you've spent $4.48 to try it out. So check it out. Link in the description and in chat. Lineup generator. And congrats to Daniel, man. I love first out of 38,000 in a quarter arcade, or what's it called? The pinch hit, actually, on FanDuel. But same thing applies. 25 cents in the $400. Massive ROI. And we've seen a lot of that with the lineup generator lately. So congrats to all of you guys who have used it and won. If you want to check it out, $4.48 for the first week. Link in the description and chat. All right, let's talk main slate here.
We did get, it was mentioned in chat, and I think it was a good point. We did get the Dodgers lineup. What we expected, except Austin Barnes is in instead of JD Martinez. It's not like a huge needle mover. It's not like this lineup is still bad, but that is a slight upgrade for Kramer.
Okay. Main slate, baby, let's go. Yu Darvish, Jose Barrios, San Diego Padres, and Toronto, 9-run total here. Let me refresh here, make sure we got the main slate up for everything, and we are good to go. All right, so on the main slate here, yeah, of course, it's the Seattle pitcher with the top 2 probability. It feels like every damn day, dude. That game has a 7.5 total. Darvish, 15% top 2 probability, around 11% ownership, slight positive leverage. Tough matchup against Toronto, though. He's not wildly overpriced, so that's understandable. And pretty similar numbers going to Jose Barrios, but a lot less ownership here against the Padres. What do you want to do with the arms in this one?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a scary matchup for Darvish. It's also a park downgrade going into Rogers Center. 4.6 implied run total for the Jays. Darvish is good, so you can certainly make the upside case for him. 25.8% strikeout percentage, 3.77 xFIP. He's a good pitcher. He's pulling 11% ownership, 15% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So ownership pretty much looks like it should here. Barrios getting about half the ownership, 12% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher. Not as good as Darvish, but he is still having a solid year as well. 22.8% K percentage, 3.96 xFIP. He does typically struggle with left-handed power, 189 expected ISO to lefties this year. So hasn't struggled with it as much as he did last year, but still higher than the 176 mark to righties. 322 expected WOBA to righties, 339 to lefties. He does strike lefties out at a higher clip. So dangerous matchup for both of these guys. Tough park, but two good pitchers. I think they're pretty similar. I prefer Darvish, but 11 or 12% ownership to him, 6% to Barrios. They both just look like guys that you can use at relatively low ownership to lower the total ownership of your lineup without losing upside.
The top stacks tool is interesting for the main slate. There's no team that's just pulling away from the pack. You've got Atlanta against Ryan Nelson, and that's, obviously a good spot. They've got a total hovering around 6. And then San Francisco against Graham Ashcraft. That's a 5.7 total. They both have 12% top stack probabilities. Once you get past that, though, again, you just pretty much have a sea of like 8, 7, 5% stacks. And that's what you're getting with both San Diego and Toronto today.
Yeah, it's a pretty flat slate, like you said. You have Atlanta and San Francisco at the top, and then just a ton of teams between like 5 and 8%, including both San Diego and Toronto.
You like the bats here?
I like the bats in the same way I like the pitching. I don't look at either offense and say, oh, this is a great spot for them, but they do have a lot of upside. Both lineups are very talented. It's a good park for home runs. They both hit a lot of home runs. So, there's not one thing that I'm looking at and saying, oh yeah, I think this is a really, really good spot. Darvish is a lot of 174 expected ISO to righties, 106 to lefties. That is somewhat interesting just because Toronto's lineup is so righty heavy. On the other side, as I mentioned before, Barrios giving up some power to both sides of the plate, a bit more to lefties. So, Soto is going to look probably the best here, but Tatis, Machado, Bogarts, Cronenworth are all going to look good as well. So it's pretty much, I think, just upside from these teams. 7% projected ownership to the Padres with about an 8% chance of being the top stack. 5% ownership to the Blue Jays with about a 5.5% chance of being the top stack. So both teams pretty much correctly owned, maybe a little bit under owned.
This next game where you've got Carlos Rodon and Chase Silseth. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
You got Rodon coming off, his second start of the year in Coors Field. I don't really know if there's a whole lot to take away from that. This is somebody that, last year had a 33% K rate. Pretty solid in 31 starts. Season prior to that, 35% K rate with the White Sox. The strikeout stuff is absolutely there. The Angels have a middle of the road strikeout rate versus left-handed pitching this season. What do you do with a guy at a mid-range price like Rodon today, knowing that he's only made 2 starts, but he did throw 88 pitches last time out? So my assumption is that he's probably good to go as long as he's pitching well.
Yeah, I think at this price tag, you play him. Obviously, there's some risk here. It's his third start back from injury. It's a dangerous park to pitch in. It's an Angels lineup that has a lot of power, but an $8,500 price tag on a relatively stretched out Carlos Rodon is really low. This is a 10K pitcher, has been for a while when he's healthy. And like you said, he threw 88 pitches last time out. So as long as he's pitching well, you should be getting a pretty normal workload from him. And the Yankees need to win games too. It's not like this team is in first place and coasting to a playoff spot and has the luxury of just, taking some losses in July. They're in last place in the AL East right now and
crazy
need to win games. And it's not that they're bad. They're over 5. It's just that the AL East is so good. But
now that your Orioles are good again, it's a very good division.
Yeah. The Orioles are good. Obviously, Tampa's good. Historically, the Orioles and the Rays are the teams that make it so the Yankees and Red Sox are always going to be in the top 3. And now it's they're the 2 best teams. So everything's kind of just flipped. But they don't have the luxury of just saying oh yeah, we're just going to throw Rodon 80 pitches for the next month and see what happens. They need to win some games, and he did throw 88 like you said last time out. So you're just getting too cheap of a price tag on him, and it alleviates most of the concerns that I normally would have. He has the second highest top 2 pitcher percentage behind Castillo, second highest ownership behind Castillo, and that all makes sense to me.
What do you think a trade for Shohei Ohtani would look like? What do you give up to get this guy?
So it's interesting because obviously if you were talking about Ohtani with years of control, it would just be some team's entire farm system. But I'm interested to one. I don't think he'll get traded. I think the Angels owner is too stupid. But
they'll
also,
continue to have two of the best players ever and not make the playoffs continuously. And
right, he's going to just let Ohtani walk, I think. But because they're sort of in position for the wild card, like they have a chance. I don't think he's going to give up, but he should. So it would be interesting to me though, like because he is a rental, and so teams they're obviously going to be willing to part with talent for him. But it would be a pretty big mistake. Like I saw Rosenthal write an article today that the Orioles should be aggressive in going after Ohtani. And like, I couldn't disagree more because they shouldn't just be, unless the market is low, like they shouldn't just be emptying their farm system for 2 months of Ohtani. But right. that kind of gets to my point of like, most of these teams that would trade for him have no chance of signing him to an extension. So maybe does the market just end up being kind of normal for like, is it like a market for like a good player as opposed to the best player where teams are saying, look, like we'll give you some prospects, but you're not getting our best prospect or our, top 2 prospects or anything like that.
Right. In that case, though, you can't blame the Angels for not trading him.
Well, you still can because he's walking this offseason anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. But there will be a team that gives up the farm for him. That's just the way it always goes. There's always a team that'll do it.
So I don't think anybody will give up the farm, but like thinking about it just from like the Orioles standpoint makes a lot of sense because the Orioles have the prospects to go trade for anybody they want. They can top anybody's offer because they have Jackson Holliday. The Orioles are never giving up Jackson Holliday for Ohtani, but like you could see where maybe they do give up, 3 of their top 5 or 6 prospects, which would be a lot and something that other teams can't match. Like that's still giving up a lot, but they're still not going to like empty their farm system for him.
Right. But it is crazy because you're getting you're not just getting the best hitter or right. One of the best pitchers. You're getting both. If his career continues at this clip, is he not live to be the greatest athlete ever? And don't hit me with like some Jim Thorpe shit. Nobody cares about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say people are gonna push back on like whether baseball players are athletes.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
I mean, I know.
That's the dumbest thing ever. Like the fact that he does both of these as good as anyone else I can't see how you could. I'm not saying you have to be like, okay, yeah, be the greatest athlete ever. But if you can't sit back and be like, yeah, he's definitely live to be in that conversation as the best athlete ever, I think you're insane.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, not only does he hit and throw, he can run.
He does everything.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
He has double-digit stolen bases this year. and last year and the year before that.
And 35 home runs.
And he's got a bunch of triples too.
What?
He's got 7 triples.
He has 7 triples?
Yeah.
It doesn't make it actually doesn't make sense because it's hard to even comprehend something this incredible.
He has more extra base hits than singles.
Amazing. He's incredible. And he has the guy has 35 home runs and he's striking batters out at 32%. He has a 32% strikeout rate and he has 35 home,
32% strikeout rate, 373 ISO, 184 WRC plus. He's hitting over 300 if you're a batting average guy.
We've never seen anything like it, and we might not ever see anything like it ever again in our lifetime.
So I think we will, just because he's opening the door for guys to do it.
I think you're right in that we could see these type of players. I don't know you see it at this skill level at both an offensive player and a pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, there is a chance that this is just like a Barry Bonds level guy where it's just like you never see it again. I just assume we will, just because athletes are always getting better, and
sure,
you're just going to get your best athletes now being like, no, I'm going to pitch and I'm going to hit, and teams are saying like, okay, go for it.
I agree. Athletes are just getting better. There's no doubt about that. But this is like so much better than everything else in the league right now.
Well, the thing that makes it so tough and makes it, so there is at least some chance you won't see it again, It's not like he's good at both. He's the best hitter in baseball.
That's what I'm saying. Right?
Like,
yes.
He is putting up the numbers that Mike Trout puts up in his prime.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So it's first you have to find somebody that can even hit like Mike Trout, and that's going to be a while. And then you also have to find somebody that can pitch.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Like, how good of a pitcher would you say he is?
Top 10.
Yeah. But you know, another thing, Adam, it's not just like, oh yeah, guys will come up and go, well, I want to do both of these. I totally understand all of that, right? I get that. You see it in football with like certain positions expanding more and all that. But you still have to dedicate time to be elite at both of those. And if you're not just naturally gifted to the, 100 percentile giftedness in both of those, there's no way you can dedicate enough time to be as good at both positions.
Right, exactly. That's what like kind of gets slept on. I think there's like a natural tendency to like view this like it's a video game and you just, turn the sliders all the way up and let him hit and pitch. But like you have to work on both of those things. And you have major leaguers that like MJ Melendez just got moved to the outfield by KC because he couldn't, they felt that working on being a catcher was taking away from his hitting. Like it's a actual problem that guys run into. And then you have him just doing two completely opposite.
Yeah. It actually, I've said a million times, doesn't make sense though. Doesn't make sense. Land is pushing back on the best hitter in the league.
So is what it is.
But dude, even if you were pushing back on that and you go, fine, he's top 3 or top 5, what difference does it even make, really? It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, he's citing RBI, so.
Yeah, I saw that. All right. Any bats from this game? We're on New York.
Yeah, I'm guessing we're on the Angels because we just talked about Ohtani for 10 minutes.
Sorry, that's a fun conversation.
Yeah, the Yankees look okay. Silseth struggled at AAA this year. 4.5 implied run total. Good park. Now the Yankees do suck right now, but they are cheap. They're right now middle of the pack in top stack percentage at 7.5%, 10.5% ownership. They look fine. Not particularly interested in the Angels side.
White Sox, New York Mets, Tuki Toussaint, Justin Verlander, 9-run total here. White Sox, big road dogs today. On the top pitchers tool. By the way, guys, you know this already, but it's not just the lineup generator. It's all of our tools that are 50% off. So if you wanted the top stack tool, you hear us talk about it, top pitchers tool, all of that stuff, right? All our MMA, NASCAR, PGA tools, every sport that's happening right now, your first month is half off. Your first week is half off, whether you want to do one sport or every sport. The link in the description and in chat gets you half off everything. And if you go with those, you're getting the lineup generators included in that. So you wouldn't have to buy them separately. But yeah, just in case anyone was wondering how they get access to all of these tools and the premium Discord and all of that, half off whatever you want for the week or month, one sport, every sport, just click the link down there to make sure that you take advantage of that 50% off deal. But yeah, Verlander, 20% top 2 probability, 35% ownership on this slate, though. Seems like a pretty good spot to start.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the hitter leaderboards because Jake said that Acuna was better than Ohtani, which he's not. And Acuna has the second highest WRC plus among qualified hitters this year at 168, which is obviously great. It's like 16 points below Ohtani.
It's unbelievable. Justin Verlander, I was talking about the ownership coming into him is at 35% right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense on this slate. It's a decent matchup against the White Sox, $8,800 price tag. Verlander has struck out 20% of hitters, 4.57 xFIP this year. I still expect that strikeout number to come up going forward. He's had some tough matchups. It would be unusual for his strikeout percentage to drop off this much from where it was, a year ago, 2 years ago. But the ownership is probably a little bit high, but again, the pitching on this slate kind of just still pushes you that direction. He projects well, 20.5% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher, 35% ownership. If you want to turn some of that into, Eduardo Rodriguez or Kenta Maeda, there's no real issue there, but he does look good at 8,800.
Do you have any interest in the other side of this game, Tuki Toussaint?
Not particularly. He had a good outing. I think it was his last time out. And he does have good stuff. It's just a matter of whether or not he's able to throw strikes. Last time out, 5 1/3 innings pitched, 1 earned run against Atlanta. Before that, 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs against the Cards. So, and he threw, 80 plus pitches in 3 straight appearances. So at 6,900, I think he has the ability to pay off that price tag, but it's a tough matchup against the Mets. 5.4 implied run total, difficult team to strike out. A lot of good hitters in this lineup. So I don't anticipate really getting to Tucson here.
Zach Pinkleton nailed it. And this is, I think, a better way to look at this. Said, I know people like to argue about everything, but you can't seriously make an argument that Ohtani isn't the best player in baseball by an absolute mile. That's the easiest way to look at it.
Yeah.
He's the best
completely.
player. Yeah. Daniel, how do I upload CSV file from Stochastic Lineup Generator? Super easy. And Mike can demo that for you. Once you go in and you save the lineups that you want, just click View Saved Lineups. And when you view the lineups, you'll see it in yellow, the export to CSV. It's that easy. So, Mike, throw it, just demo that for him on the screen to make it easier. You go in, you select your lineups, save a few of them, or however many you want, really. Save those, and then you hit View Saved Lineups and then export to CSV. Do you like bats from this game, Adam, between the White Sox and Mets?
I like the Mets side somewhat. The park's not great for hitting. I don't love the matchup with Toussaint because he has been good at limiting production, albeit in a small sample this year. But even going back to the start of the 2021 season, 116 expected ISO to righties, 174 to lefties. So I am interested in the Mets just because they have good hitters and Toussaint's not a proven major league pitcher, but another just middle of the pack team, 7% chance of being the top stack, 10.5% ownership. On the other side, I think it's more difficult to get to the White Sox. Now, they aren't getting much ownership at all, which is nice, but it's not a great park. It's not a great matchup. 122 expected ISO to righties from Verlander, 152 to lefties. So there's nowhere that you're really looking at and saying, oh, well, this hitter isn't a really good home run spot or anything like that. So definitely more interested in the Mets side.
Ross Stripling, Graham Ashcraft, 10.5 run total in this game. This should be another fun one. We saw that game finish. Was it 11-10 or 12-11 or something last night? Just an insane amount of run production. Not entirely unsurprising either or unexpected. 85 degrees today again at Great American Ballpark. This is a massively hitter-friendly venue, so we're going to need to spend some time on it. San Francisco, second highest top stack probability in the top stack tool. Really, it's tied with Atlanta. It's the same, essentially. And then Cincinnati at 8.3%. They are tied, or they are in third place by themselves, Adam. So 2 of the top 3 top stack percentage plays on this slate are from this exact same game.
Yeah. Second and third in top stack percentage. We don't have Coors Field on this slate, which means this is the best hitters park. Neither pitcher is particularly good. 5.2 to 5.3 implied run total on both sides. Ashcraft so far this year has allowed a 140 expected ISO to lefties, 175 to righties. Stripling's giving up a surprising amount of power. 192 expected ISO to left-handed hitters, 246 to righties. The Reds are more expensive than the Giants, so San Francisco is going to be the easier team to get to. They're likely to pull more ownership. Right now we have them with like double the ownership share as the Reds because of the pricing, but both of these offenses look really, really good.
How do the pitchers look?
They look bad.
I was reading chat. I mean, it's got some people riled up. And Al, I didn't say that because he had a big season that he's in the conversation for the best ever. I said if he continues to play, at this level as a pitcher and hitter, will he be? I didn't say the best ever baseball player. I said the best ever athlete. I took it even a step further. Josh tends to disagree with you. He's going to the projection systems as far as Ohtani not being in the top 5 as far as hitters.
Josh is arguing semantics. He's arguing forward-looking best hitter in baseball. I am simply saying Ohtani is the best hitter in baseball right now as far as what he has done this season.
You could also argue that Josh is arguing because he likes to argue.
That also.
That's exactly what it is. Don't you got nothing better to do, fella? All right. Where do these guys... Ashcraft 5% top 2 pitcher probability. Where's Stripling at? 3%. No ownership to either of these guys for good reason. but I was just curious.
Also worth noting that the projection system Josh uses, which is garbage, is the lowest of all of the FanGraphs projection systems on Ohtani.
Is what?
The lowest on Ohtani of all of the projection systems available on FanGraphs.
Well, surely he used that one intentionally.
Right.
All right, 4 games to go here, and 26 likes to 100. If there's one of you in here, just a little reminder. Maybe you forgot. That's okay. Hit that thumbs up. 26 of you possibly that could do so in order to get us to that century mark into the triple digits here on a Wednesday morning. It would be appreciated. Thank you in advance, because I know we'll get there before this show lets out. All right, let's talk about Arizona and Atlanta. Here's another one. Ryan Nelson, primed to get tuned up in this game. You've got it in Atlanta. Temperatures right now, it's going to be around 88 degrees here. And we saw a ton of run production between Arizona and Atlanta yesterday. I'm not saying we should be looking for something like that, but Atlanta, massive implied run total, north of 6, highest top stack probability on the slate. Ryan Nelson might be smart calling out sick for this one.
Yeah, brutal spot for him, and the Braves look great. 6.1 implied run total. Nelson doesn't strike out a lot of guys. Righties so far this year, 162 expected ISO, which is reasonable. Lefties have had a lot more success with a 220 expected ISO, 380 expected WOBA. Matt Olson's going to look fantastic. Now, the rest of the lineup, for the most part, is right-handed, but they're just so good that it doesn't matter. Acuna, Riley, Murphy, all are going to look great. Albies will be hitting from the left side, which is nice. Harris is left-handed. Ozuna's got power from the right side. Braves just look really good. They are relatively expensive, but still 12% chance to be in the top stack, about 10% ownership. In terms of stack score, they do come in middle of the pack just because they are so expensive. But pitchers on this slate just aren't expensive enough that I think it's going to matter. Eduardo Rodriguez is the most expensive pitcher at 9,500. It's going to be pretty easy to just live in the like 16 to 17K price range for your pitchers on DraftKings and be able to afford pretty much whatever you want in the way of bats.
For sure. Yeah, I guess so. Right. So you think it'll be easy to get to some of these really expensive stacks today?
I don't think it'll be that tough. Like maybe you have to mix in some Arcia, some Harris, the cheaper guys from the bottom of the order for Atlanta, as opposed to Acuna, Albies, Riley, Olson, all at, 3 of them at north of 6K and then 2 of them north of 5K. But I think it's going to be relatively easy to get to the offenses that you want.
Anything else for the offenses in this game worth talking about?
No, I mean, tough matchup for the Diamondbacks. I didn't really mention Morton as a pitcher, but he is third in top 2 pitcher percentage. He's getting 27% ownership. It's a tough spot. The Diamondbacks are a good offense, but Morton has a 25.7% K percentage, 3.86 xFIP. Certainly a solid pitching play here.
So is it Trevor? Yesterday was Josh and I talked about this on the deeper dive. You and I talked about it. Remember, I had earlier had it as Corbin, and then it switched to Trevor Williams, and then switch back to Corbin. Is it like the sports books have Trevor Williams listed? MLB.com didn't have anyone listed earlier. So I assume it's Trevor Williams today.
Yeah, I'm seeing Williams. I'm seeing Williams now. Granted,
okay, is he officially listed?
No, I don't know. Where I'm looking has Williams, but
it looks like he's probably. Let's assume that it's Trevor Williams today for the purpose of this show. I think it should be. On the road against Kyle Hendricks, 9-run total here at Wrigley. We have any wind? Not really.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it should matter.
Nothing significant. 74 degrees, so not exactly scolding hitting weather. But at the same time, it's Trevor Williams and Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks has been fine. It's just not a particularly high upside arm at any point. Do you like him though in this spot at all, or should we just be fading? Because he's not going to get strikeouts at a significant clip anyway, and Washington doesn't really strike out, but he is kind of cheap.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of cheap. He's getting no ownership. I don't think he's a great play here. He's striking out about 16% of hitters this year. He's good enough where, if you are, for example, trying to get that top part of the Braves order and you need to pay down a little bit more for pitching, then go ahead and roll the dice, but you shouldn't be expecting a lot out of him. Shouldn't be expecting much out of Williams either. Does have better strikeout numbers against righties. 24% strikeout percentage against righties this year for Williams compared to 12% against lefties. You probably will get a pretty balanced lineup from the Cubs. So overall, I'm not really interested in pitching. Hendricks is where I would go first.
Do you like some of these Cubs bats against Williams, though? He has had some issues with opponent power. 1.83 home runs per nine this year. Close to 2 home runs per nine is not that great. 198 xISO against lefties, 208 xISO against righties. So there is some power potential here. 362 xWOBA against lefties as well. Wow.
Yeah, the Cubs look pretty good here. I actually talked about this spot yesterday morning because I thought it was Williams then. He historically is much worse against lefties than righties. This year, he's actually given up power to both sides. 198 expected ISO to lefties, 208 to righties. Now, the strikeout percentage against lefties is half of what it is against righties. So Cody Bellinger is still going to really stand out at 4,400. Hap has struggled this year, but a $3,400 price tag there looks good. You have a cheap lefty and Mike Tauchman probably leading off. Jared Young is cheap. So Bellinger really stands out. I like Hap, and then whatever other lefties you get to are fine. But he's been giving up power to righties as well. Christopher Morel is going to look good if he's batting third. He was scratched yesterday, so remains to be seen if he plays today. But he's only 4,300. Suzuki's having a rough year, but he does still have power upside at only 3,300. 5 implied run total for the Cubs. So yeah, they look pretty good here. In particular, I really like Bellinger.
Yeah, it's a good spot. And it's not the most conducive hitting, conditions, but it's not bad either. Do you have any other interest to wrap this game up in Washington bats against Kyle Hendricks? Seems like a pretty unappealing spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unappealing. They are cheap. Hendricks has allowed a 195 expected ISO to lefties this year. I have no problem using like Keibert Ruiz as a catcher option. CJ Abrams is a cheap shortstop option. They're fine as a value from a value standpoint. Maybe if you are going to those expensive Braves, you mix in Abrams at 3,200. You mix in, I guess, like Ruiz obviously doesn't work if you're playing Sean Murphy, but say you're going to 4 of the expensive Braves, you mix in Ruiz. I think they work in that sense.
2 games to go here, making pretty decent timing for 13 games. And by the way, I saw some pick'em talk in chat right now. I don't know if you're talking about prize picks or not, but earlier I mentioned that you get 50% off all of our tools. If you've still been hanging around on the fence in a state where prize picks is available and you haven't signed up yet, using that link in the description or in chat where you only have to deposit $10 and you get a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value. What the hell are you waiting for, man? All of our tools, it's $120 value. All the tools I talked about earlier, I'm not going to repeat all of them because it's a ton for every single sport, including the lineup generator and premium Discord, and all of the other tools are all free for the entirety of the month when you sign up at Prize Picks using the link. You got to use the link, otherwise we can't track you for it, but you get all of that. Plus, you're going over on Prize Picks on a site that is blowing up, super popular recently for good reason. You're just picking higher or lower over or unders on these player props and picking the ones that you like most, throwing them into a lineup. So whether it's like a 5-player flex play or a 5-pick flex play, you 10x your entry if you hit all 5. Unlike traditional sports books, though, if you hit 4 or 5, you're still 2xing. You still make money back on 3 of 5. There's a 6-pick flex play to 25x your entry. They have an insane amount of sports, and also way more props than you would find at some of these other places, like some really unique ones that I think you can find an edge with. You can use all of our tools to help you with that on top of it, since you're getting the free month. But yeah, if you're at a state where Prize Picks is available, you're looking to scratch that itch on top of it without having legal sports betting, because most states that Prize Picks is available, you don't have legal sports betting. Jump on board, man. Get all of our tools for DFS. Get tools to help you at Prize Picks. Start winning some money over there. And also understand that on top of this, on top of the free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, you're getting a first match deposit bonus 100% up to $100. So if you put 100 in, now you have $200. You just doubled your bankroll out of the gate. That money's immediately playable. It's not a drip bonus. Your account balance goes from 100 to 200. Or if you only have $20, it goes from 20 to 40. So awesome deal. Link in the description and in chat. If you're not at Prize Picks yet, no better way to do it to get that bonus and the free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. All right, let's keep going here. Detroit and Kansas City. The Detroit Tigers today are running out Eduardo Rodriguez, Ryan Yarbrough on the other side for the Kansas City Royals. 8.5 run total here. So relatively low. Detroit minus 145 on the money line. What's your interest level in Eduardo Rodriguez today? You're muted. You're muted.
Shit, I'm muted.
I tried to tell you twice.
Yeah, I didn't hear you. Rodriguez is in his third start back from the injured list, through 88 pitches in 5 innings last time out. So looks pretty good here. $9,500 price tag's reasonable. Good matchup against KC. Good park, although it is 90 degrees, so that doesn't exactly help. But Rodriguez is coming in fifth in top 2 pitcher percentage at 19%, getting about 19% ownership. Like I said before, I wouldn't mind turning some of that Verlander exposure into Rodriguez if you can find the salary, but he is the most expensive pitcher on the slate as well.
Man, we got people fired up in chat this morning, man. It's wonderful. Are your allergies back again?
They never left.
You seemed okay through the first hour of this.
Yeah, no, it's not.
I think it's just a way for you to get out of shows early by just making it seem worse towards the end of it. What about bats here between Kansas City and Detroit? You've got 7% top stack probability going to Kansas City or to Detroit. KC's all the way down there at 3%. But as we talked about, just like flat likelihood of being the top stack today, Detroit's right in the middle of all of these teams not named Atlanta and San Francisco today.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not good, but they're still middle of the pack in top stack. They're fourth in stack score because they're so cheap. They're another team you can use to sort of balance out those Braves salaries or, other expensive teams that you want to get to. They look fine. You can only get so excited about the Tigers, though.
Any interest in Kansas City?
Yes. I always want to say no, but then I realize I'm going to probably have them as like my highest owned team. Because that's how it works. But Bobby Witt at 4,800, still a good shortstop play. Garcia is a good value at third. Other than that, though, not really particularly interested in Kansas City. From the Tiger side, Torkelson at 3,800 looks pretty good. Veerling looks pretty good at 3,200.
Let's wrap this one up with Minnesota and Seattle. Once again, the lowest total on the slate. Clearly a pitcher-friendly venue in Seattle. 7.5 run total. Kenta Maeda and Luis Castillo. So right now, Castillo, 28% top 2 pitcher probability on DraftKings, 45% ownership. Kenta Maeda, 16% top 2 probability, 12% ownership. I actually want to start with Kenta Maeda here. Get your thoughts on him against Seattle today because he's 7,800. He's had a few really great starts. He's had a few that have been forgettable at best, but what do you make of 12% ownership coming into him at 7,800?
I think it makes sense. The price tag's very reasonable at 7,800. He is a pretty good pitcher overall. My concern is that he hasn't thrown more than 87 pitches this year.
Yeah, his pitch counts have been very low.
Right. So it's like, if he gets through 5 at 80 pitches, are they just going to pull him or are they going to let him go back out there for the 6th? I don't know. But he does have a 26.5% strikeout percentage this year, 4.2 xFIP, good pitcher's park, good strikeout matchup. Given the relative lack of ownership, I do think he's pretty interesting just because at that price, he can go 5 innings, say strikes out 6-7 guys. He can be fine anyway. But then if you do happen to get that 6th inning, then you're looking really good. So I'd be a little bit more concerned about the pitch count if that ownership comes up. But the way it looks right now, definitely interested in Maeda. The park's good, strikeout matchup's good, price tag is reasonable. So again, he's somebody you can be going to get to these more expensive offenses. On the other side, Castillo.
I mean, real quick, if you knew that Kenta Maeda could throw 100 pitches, he'd be one of the best pitching options on the slate by far.
Yeah, if you knew, yeah, exactly. So that's sort of the thing. I don't think he's going to do it, but he did miss a bunch of time this year, so it's kind of misleading looking at pitch counts. And he has also struggled somewhat. Like last start, he threw 80 pitches in 3 innings, but gave up 3 runs, walked 4 guys. If he's pitching well, maybe he gets to 90, 95. There's at least a chance of it happening, which is enough for me, especially because even if he does throw 85 pitches here, at 7,800, he can still get it done.
Sorry, go ahead, Luis Castillo.
Just looks really good. Good strikeout matchup against the Twins, 3.4 implied run total. Highest owned pitcher on the slate, and he should be 28% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. He's a really good strikeout pitcher. He's in a great park. 26.9% strikeout percentage is the highest on the slate. 3.73 xFIP. He just looks really, really good.
Jake said, is Mike Trout the most overrated player of all time? I think dude has played baseball in October one time. Is this the same guy that was saying this yesterday, or do we now have?
No, he has to be trolling because of the guy yesterday. Like
it was right.
There's no way we have the same dumb opinion back-to-back days.
Right. It was a different player though, right?
It was a different
player,
person. Yeah.
There was a different person in chat, right?
Yes.
Man, gotta love it. But as far as bats go, it's tough to get into anything here. I mean, Ken Tomato's had a few tough starts, but it's still not a great park. You know, like even if you were to try and bank on Ken Tomato struggling today, it's not a park that feels great. Minnesota has the lowest top stack probability, lowest ownership on the slate. So really, it all comes down to: is there any interest in Seattle stacks against Ken Tomato? I don't know. These both look pretty bad, and they grade out pretty bad in all of our tools as well.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say is the same thing I've said about the Mariners each of the last couple slates. They're just too cheap for the power that they give you, but it's not a good park. It's not a great matchup. But anytime you're seeing Rodriguez sub 5K and then Cal Raleigh's your next most expensive hitter at 3,700. Like Suarez is sub 3K, Kelenic 3,600, Teoscar Hernandez is 3,100. That all just stands out from the sense of you could stack the Mariners and then get like the best hitters around them and the best pitching around them and have a really high ceiling, but they're still unlikely to come through given the park and the matchup.
Well, we got 13 up and 13 down, baby. How about that? Not bad. Early and late. If you guys tuned in late, remember, early slate, all of it's on here. Main slate's on here, as you know. Just fast forward or rewind with the sidebar. You can see everything. That's why we have it. So you can move. What's that? You're going to have to take the video down now. If you can, that's great. You might have to take it down. If that's the case, don't take it down because we only have a couple hours. If you can, that would be great if we get timestamps. Otherwise, use the sidebar. I trust that you guys are savvy enough to figure out that old fast forward and rewind feature. But appreciate you. We're 4 likes to 100. So 4. I'll wait until we get there. I won't. Adam's allergies are, calling his name. But no, follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS, _D. Thanks to Mike for producing. You have Live Before Lock and Deeper Dive coming up tonight for the main slate. Don't forget about that. And everything else, PGA Live Before Lock. We got you covered right here on the Stochastic Fantasy channel. And we'll see you back here for the next one. Thanks, guys. Peace.